I thought the dumbest fight I'd ever have with my HOA was over a garden gnome. You know, the little stone guy with a red hat and a smile? My wife picked it up from a garage sale for $5. We placed it under the oak tree by the driveway. Not flashy, not neon, not offensive. Just a gnome. 2 days later, I got a notice of violation, taped to my mailbox. Bold, underlined, and written in Comic Sans of all fonts. Dear homeowner, per HOA Bylaw 14.3 subsection C, unauthorized yard ornaments are strictly prohibited. Remove the illegal object immediately. Failure to comply will result in a fine of $75 per day. A gnome. $75 a day. For a gnome. I laughed at first, thought it had to be a joke. I even waved the paper at my neighbor Dave across the street. He said, "Careful, man. Karen's on a tear this month. She fined me $200 because my lawn was 2 shades too green." That's when I realized this wasn't going to blow over. I sent the HOA a polite email, asking what harm the gnome caused. Their reply: "Noncompliance with aesthetic standards devalues property. Your gnome threatens neighborhood harmony." Neighborhood harmony. Because of a smiling stone elf. I removed the gnome that night, shoved it into the garage, and told my wife we'd let it go. But inside, a fuse was lit. I decided I'd keep my head down, until they went after my son. My son Ben is 12 years old. Smart kid, kind heart, literal artificial heart, actually. He had a congenital defect, and after a brutal surgery, he's alive today because of a small medical device he carries in his backpack at all times. The backpack isn't a choice. It isn't a fashion statement. It's his lifeline. HOA Rule 9.6 states, no sports bags, duffel bags, or backpacks may be left in communal areas. Ben left his backpack on the porch one afternoon after coming home from school. He was tired. I was mowing the lawn. 10 minutes later, I heard shouting. Karen, the HOA president, was standing on my porch pointing at Ben's bag like it was a ticking bomb. "Whose bag is this?" she screeched. "My son's," I said, shutting off the mower. "It's medical." "Doesn't matter," she snapped. "Rules are rules. No bags left unattended. Could be trash, could attract vermin. I'll fine you $50. I explained calmly that it wasn't just a bag. It contained a monitor, medication, and emergency equipment for Ben's heart. She rolled her eyes. "Everyone thinks their kid is special. If we let you slide, everyone will want exceptions." I thought that was the end of it. Until the next day, when I got another violation notice. This time the fine was $150. And the kicker? The notice claimed I was endangering the community by harboring hazardous equipment. Hazardous equipment. They were calling my son's artificial heart a hazard. That's when I realized, these people weren't just ridiculous. They were dangerous. 2 weeks later, the situation escalated in a way I still can't believe. Ben had a friend over, and they were tossing a football in the yard. He set his backpack down again, right by the porch steps. Karen marched over mid-game like she owned the place. "How many times do I have to tell you people?" she shouted. She grabbed the backpack. Ben yelled, "No, wait. That's my heart machine." She didn't listen. She yanked the zipper open and dumped the contents onto the concrete. Wires, a portable charger, and the battery pack for his artificial heart spilled out. The screen flashed a warning. Ben started crying. I sprinted over, scooping up the equipment before it could get damaged. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. Karen crossed her arms. "Enforcing the rules. Backpacks aren't allowed. If he's got whatever this is, he should keep it inside." I held up the heart monitor. "Lady, this keeps my kid alive. If it had broken..." She cut me off. "Not my problem. Rules are rules. Maybe you shouldn't live here if you can't follow them." That night, my wife wanted to call the police. I didn't. Not yet. I thought maybe we could settle it through the board. But I did write down every detail, timestamped it, and took pictures of the torn backpack. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. And I was right. The next morning, the sheriff knocked on my door with a charge, attempted murder. I wish I was making this up. The sheriff handed me a citation, apparently filed by Karen herself. She claimed I recklessly endangered the neighborhood by allowing my son to carry suspicious electrical devices in his backpack. Her statement. The father knowingly left a hazardous battery-operated contraption on the porch, where it could have exploded. When I attempted to neutralize it, he interfered aggressively. This constitutes attempted endangerment of minors, other neighborhood children, and attempted murder. Attempted murder. Because my kid carries a life support machine. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the paperwork while my wife cried. Ben just looked confused. Dad, am I in trouble? No, buddy, I told him. We're going to fix this. I called the sheriff's office later that day. Thankfully, the deputy I spoke with knew what a ventricular assist device was. After 10 minutes, the charges were dropped. This sounds like a civil issue, not criminal, he said. But keep records. If this HOA president keeps filing false claims, you'll have a case. That's when my comm broke. They had gone after my son. They had tried to twist his medical condition into a crime. I went into full documentation mode. Every letter, every fine, every confrontation, I photographed, recorded, and stored in a binder. Because I knew the showdown was coming. And when it came, I wanted to be ready. A week later, the mailbox was stuffed with HOA letters. For violations in one day. Improper garbage storage. Because our trash bin lid was cracked. Illegal curtain color. Apparently beige wasn't approved. Overgrown grass. Our lawn measured 3.1 inches instead of 3.0. Suspicious child's bag. Yes again. Each one carried a fine. $50, $75, $100, and $200. I checked the HOA bylaws. Guess what? Only 2 of those rules actually existed. The others? Pure invention. That's when I noticed something else. The violation letters weren't on HOA letterhead. They were on cheap printer paper, signed only by Karen. No board approval, no signatures from other officers. Just her. I called my neighbor Dave again. He came over, beer in hand, shaking his head. She's been doing the same to me. Fine me $300 for leaving my Christmas lights up in January. Except there's no rule about lights. That's when it clicked. Karen wasn't enforcing HOA rules. She was making them up. I filed the letters in my binder. Then I made a decision. I was going to the next HOA board meeting. And I wasn't just showing up. I was showing up prepared. Because if Karen thought she could bully us with fake rules, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. The HOA board meets once a month in the community center. Usually, 5 people show up. Karen, 2 board members who nod like bobbleheads, and a couple of board neighbors. This time, the room was packed. Word had spread about Karen ripping open my son's medical bag. Parents were angry. Seniors were annoyed about their fines. Dave brought popcorn, literally. Karen strutted in with her binder, smirking. Let's call this meeting to order, she said, tapping a gavel like she was a Supreme Court justice. I sat in the front row with my own binder. When she started the violation review section, I raised my hand. Yes, she said, exasperated. I'd like to address these fines you've issued, I said. I held up one of her fake letters. Can you show us where in the bylaws it says beige curtains are prohibited? She blinked. It's implied under aesthetic standards. Funny, I replied, flipping to the bylaws. Because it's not here. In fact, there's no mention of curtain color at all. Murmurs spread through the room. Dave muttered, "Ooh, he's got receipts." Karen's face turned red. We don't need to spell out every little thing. The board has discretion. I smiled. Great point. Then can you explain why none of these letters have any board signatures? Just yours. Gasps. The board members looked at each other nervously. And for the first time, Karen's smirk faltered. After I called Karen out, the floodgates opened. Mrs. Lopez, who lives 2 doors down, raised her hand. You fine me $500 for having a bird bath. Said it was a mosquito hazard. But the bylaws don't mention bird baths either. A guy in the back shouted. You fine me for parking my truck in my own driveway. Said it wasn't aesthetically compatible. One by one, neighbors stood up, waving their own violation letters. Some were handwritten. Some were photocopies of photocopies. All signed only by Karen. The board members shifted uncomfortably. One of them, Mr. Riley, finally cleared his throat. Karen, maybe we should, review these complaints. Karen slammed her gavel. Order. These people are just upset because they broke the rules. I held up Ben's torn backpack. Did my son break a rule by needing a medical device to stay alive? Silence. The whole room stared at the ripped straps and exposed wires. Karen tried to deflect. That's different. No, I said firmly. It's not. It's the same abuse of power you've been pulling on this entire neighborhood. And it stops tonight. The applause started slow. Then it built. The room erupted. Karen looked like she wanted to sink into her chair. And that's when I realized she was losing her grip. But Karen wasn't going down without a fight. She stood, slamming both hands on the table. You people don't understand. Without rules, this neighborhood will fall apart. Property values will tank. Outsiders will move in. We'll be ruined. It sounded less like a president and more like a doomsday preacher. I kept my tone calm. Karen, nobody's asking for chaos. We're asking for fair rules. And for those rules to actually exist. If you can't enforce them legally, then you can't enforce them at all. She sneered. Oh, so now you're a lawyer? No, I said, holding up my binder. But I did talk to one. And he told me that falsifying HOA letters is fraud. Gasps again. Even the bobblehead board members looked horrified. Karen stammered. That's not fraud, it's interpretation. Dave yelled from the back. Lady, you interpreted my Christmas lights into a $300 fine. Laughter broke out. Karen's face turned beet red. I leaned in. You tore open my son's medical bag. You filed a false police report accusing me of attempted murder. If you don't step down tonight, I'll take this binder to the county courthouse tomorrow. Dead silence. For the first time since I'd moved into the neighborhood, Karen didn't have a comeback. When Karen finally sat down, shaking with rage, Mr. Riley cleared his throat again. I think it's time we vote. Karen snapped. Vote on what? On your removal as HOA president, Riley said, his voice surprisingly firm. Cheers erupted from the crowd. Karen tried to object, waving her gavel, but the board members had clearly had enough. They called for a show of hands. Out of the 30 people in the room, 26 went up. Karen's face fell. She looked around like she couldn't believe it. You're all ungrateful. I kept this neighborhood perfect. I stood and faced the room. Perfect for who? Not for us. Not for the families you bullied. Not for my son. The crowd applauded again. Riley announced, effective immediately, Karen is removed from her position as president of the HOA. Karen stormed out, muttering about lawyers and lawsuits. But she was done. For the first time in months, the neighborhood felt lighter. But the fight wasn't completely over. Because now we had to fix the damage she'd caused. The new board met the following week. And this time it wasn't just 3 people in a room. The entire community showed up. We spread the bylaws on the table. Half of them were outdated, vague, or flat-out ridiculous. No lawn furniture visible from the street. No decorations larger than 6 inches. No plants taller than 3 feet. Dave cracked a joke. So basically we're allowed gravel, beige curtains, and misery. The room laughed. We started proposing changes. Real changes. Bird baths? Allowed. Gnomes? Allowed. Medical devices? Of course allowed. The bylaws were rewritten to protect homeowners, not punish them. And we added one more clause. All violations must be reviewed and approved by a majority of the board, with signatures, before being issued. No more one-person power trips. No more fake fines. When it was done, we voted again. This time, unanimously the new bylaws passed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were living in a community, not under a dictatorship. Of course, Karen didn't go quietly. A week later, we all got a letter, a real one this time, from her lawyer. She was suing the HOA for wrongful removal, claiming emotional distress and defamation. The board panicked. But I wasn't worried. I handed them my binder. Every fake letter. Every fraudulent fine. Photos of the torn backpack. A copy of the dropped police charge. Our lawyer smiled. This isn't a problem. This is evidence. When Karen's lawyer saw the stack, he backed down fast. The lawsuit vanished overnight. But Karen didn't. She still lived in the neighborhood. She'd glare from her porch when I walked by. She'd mutter under her breath at community events. But she had no power. And honestly, that was enough for me. After Karen's removal, something amazing happened. People actually started talking to each other again. We had block parties. Kids played in the cul-de-sac without fear of fines. Someone even started a community garden. One evening, Mrs. Lopez brought over cookies. "You saved us," she said. I shook my head. We saved ourselves. I just kept receipts. Ben finally felt safe too. He wore his backpack proudly, and neighbors always checked in, making sure he was okay. One even offered to 3D print a stronger protective case for his equipment. The same HOA that once called my son's heart a hazard, now rallied around him. And in a weird way, I was grateful. Because sometimes it takes a villain to bring a community together. Remember that gnome? The one that started it all? I pulled it out of the garage one sunny Saturday and set it back under the oak tree. This time nobody complained. In fact, Dave brought over 2 more. Mrs. Lopez added a flamingo. Pretty soon, the oak tree had a whole army of tacky yard decorations. And instead of ruining property values, people stopped by to laugh, take pictures, and add their own little contributions. It became a symbol. A reminder that we weren't living under fear anymore. Every time I saw that gnome, I thought of Ben's backpack, of Karen's fake letters, of the moment we all finally stood up and said enough. Funny how something so small can spark something so big. I learned 3 things from this whole ordeal. First, never underestimate the pettiness of someone with a little bit of power. Second, document everything. Always. And third, community matters. When people stand together, even the worst tyrants crumble. Ben still jokes about it sometimes. "Dad, imagine if they actually thought my backpack was a bomb." I smile and shake my head. They did, buddy. And that's why they're gone. It's a story we'll tell for years. The time the HOA tried to fine us into oblivion. The time they accused me of attempted murder. The time we fought back and won. These days, the HOA is quiet. Peaceful. We still have rules, but they're fair now. Reasonable. Karen still lives here, technically. But she keeps to herself. No more letters. No more fines. Just bitter glares from behind her blinds. And honestly, that's victory enough. Our neighborhood feels alive again. Kids laughing, neighbors chatting, gnomes standing guard under the oak tree. Ben runs around like a normal kid, bag on his back, safe and supported. And me? I sit on the porch, sipping my coffee, watching it all unfold. Knowing that for once, the good guys actually won. So yeah, that's how my HOA tore open my son's backpack, called his artificial heart a hazard, and tried to charge me with attempted murder. And that's also how we turned the tables. I didn't plan to be some kind of suburban revolutionary. I just wanted peace. But sometimes, peace only comes after you drag the truth into the light. Now every time I see that gnome smiling under the oak tree, I remember, rules matter. But people matter more. And if you ever find yourself up against an HOA tyrant, keep your head, keep your receipts, and keep fighting. Because sometimes the best way to save your home is to save your community first.